My wife mocked my father's funeral. Well, I paid for everything, so I left her alone with our home and never looked back. I'm a 32-year-old guy, and I thought I had it all: successful career, loving wife, and our dream home. Every morning, I wake up before the sun, make coffee, and go over emails while Vanessa snoozes beside me, her hair a tangled halo across the pillow. I like order, responsibility, everything my father instilled in me, and I prided myself on keeping our life together running smoothly. Bills paid, mortgage steady, groceries stocked, schedules synced. I thought that made me a good husband. Vanessa is magnetic. She has this charm that makes people immediately like her. Quick wit, clever jokes, a laugh that's contagious. But sometimes there's a sharpness underneath, a flicker in her eyes when she talks about my family. She calls my dad boring, or my siblings old-fashioned, when I'm not in the room, then flashes that perfect smile at me, like it's nothing. I always brush it off. She's just teasing, I tell myself. She loves me. She must. Our life looks perfect from the outside. Dinner parties at our home, vacations we carefully budget for but always enjoy, lazy Sundays in sweatpants, watching whatever show we're into. We talk about buying a bigger house, maybe a dog, and we laugh about the little disagreements, like who leaves dirty socks on the floor or forgets to take out the trash. Everything seems balanced. Yet, even in those perfect moments, I notice the small things. A raised eyebrow when my mom calls to chat. A smirk when my brother asks for advice on work. Little whispers of contempt that vanish the second I turn toward her. I push it down, telling myself it's nothing, that love comes with quirks and we all have family annoyances. I go to bed each night, proud of what I've built, convinced I married the right person, convinced that our life, our little empire of stability, is safe. I have no idea how fragile it really is. I never thought I'd hear the words, "Your father passed away." It was sudden, a phone call that made the world tilt beneath me. I felt hollow, like someone had carved a piece out of my chest and left me standing in the silence. Vanessa held my hand at first, her face serious, but I could already sense the impatience behind her eyes, the subtle rolling of her gaze when the tears streamed down mine. I buried myself in planning the funeral. Every detail had to be perfect. The venue, the catering, the floral arrangements, everything I could do to honor him. I wanted people to see the man my father was: kind, disciplined, and proud of the family he raised. My siblings hovered close, grief etched on their faces, our mother barely speaking above a whisper. The extended family filed in, some tearful, some silent, all carrying their own memories. I kept thinking about Dad, his laugh, the way he'd shake his head at my mistakes, the quiet pride in his eyes when I got something right. Vanessa, though, she was different. She whispered to me once, "Do we really need all these flowers? Grandpa would have thought it's overkill." I froze. I could feel my chest tighten. Later, as we walked through the reception hall, she muttered, "So much money for a dead guy's party." The words stung like shards of glass, but I convinced myself she's just insensitive right now. Grief makes people say dumb things, I told myself. But then I noticed it. The smirk as our friends complimented the arrangements. The subtle curl of her lips when relatives praised my meticulous planning. It was fleeting, almost imperceptible, but it was there, and it made something churn deep in my stomach. Was this really just thoughtless comment, or something darker? I tried to focus on the mourners, on my father, on keeping my composure. Yet, every laugh she let slip, every sideways glance, planted tiny seeds of doubt in my mind. Something felt off, and I couldn't shake the feeling that, in the shadows of my grief, I was being watched, not with love, but with judgment. The reception was supposed to be a quiet, respectful gathering, a chance for everyone to honor my dad and share memories. But Vanessa, she had other plans. As the priest began the prayer, I caught her rolling her eyes, whispering to a friend, "Do we really need all this solemnity? He'd be bored out of his mind." My stomach dropped. I glanced around. Some guests noticed, shifting uncomfortably, while most politely looked away. Then came the eulogy. My sister read it with trembling hands, voice breaking as she recounted Dad's life. Vanessa muttered something under her breath about it being overly dramatic, and I felt a heat rise in my chest, a mix of embarrassment and disbelief. Was this woman sitting next to me, my wife, actually mocking the man who raised me, the man I loved more than anything? I tried to shake it off, thinking maybe I was being too sensitive, letting grief warp my perception. But then, I overheard her laughing with a friend in the corner, low and conspiratorial. I need a rich husband if every funeral is going to be like this. My heart sank. I froze, staring at her as the words sank in. That laugh wasn't private. It was cruel, deliberate, and aimed at me. I debated confronting her right there, in front of family, but fear rooted me in place. I didn't want to make a scene at my father's memorial. I tried to focus on the people around me, on their tears, on their stories, but it was impossible. Every smile she flashed, every whisper she shared, felt like a dagger twisting inside me. By the end of the evening, the polite applause for my arrangements and careful planning felt hollow. I noticed her smirk again, lingering just a moment too long, a subtle shadow of triumph. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a one-off slip. Her disdain, her contempt for my family, ran deeper than I had ever imagined. And the thought churned in my chest, leaving a bitter, uneasy knot that refused to loosen as the night drew to a close. After the funeral, I thought I could finally breathe, maybe begin to grieve in peace. That hope shattered the moment I looked at the bills. Thousands of dollars in expenses I hadn't anticipated, each one linked to something Vanessa insisted on upgrading. A premium casket, fit for Dad. Luxury floral arrangements that doubled the original cost. A high-end catering spread that could feed twice the number of guests. I felt my stomach twist with a mix of anger and disbelief. I confronted her gently at first, trying to keep my voice calm. "Vanessa, why didn't we discuss any of this?" I asked, flipping through invoices that seemed to mock me in black and white. She shrugged, tossing her hair back, eyes sparkling with a strange kind of excitement. "I thought you'd want it to be perfect," she said, smiling like I was overreacting. "Dad deserves the best, right?" But it wasn't pride she had in her words. It was a performance, polished and deliberate, like a mask hiding something sharper underneath. Friends and family kept commenting on my generosity. "You really outdid yourself," a cousin whispered, unaware that the money came not from some surplus, but directly from our joint savings, our life carefully built together. And Vanessa? She laughed along, but I caught the corners of her mouth twitching in a smirk when no one was looking. A stab of resentment shot through me. How could someone mock the very thing I sacrificed for, while standing beside me as if she cared? I tried to push the anger down, telling myself maybe I was too sensitive, maybe she meant well. But then I started noticing patterns. Extra charges here, unnecessary purchases there, her little indulgences paid for with money I was responsible for. I could feel the cracks widening between us, her entitlement growing, her detachment visible in the way she avoided real conversations about finances. By the end of the week, I wasn't sure whether I was angry at her or at myself for not seeing it sooner. And as I watched her casually scroll through our accounts, making plans for things I couldn't afford, a sinking feeling settled in my chest. This wasn't going to be easy to ignore. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, so one evening, I finally brought it up. "Vanessa, the other night at the funeral, you made a lot of cutting remarks about my family. Do you even realize how hurtful that was?" My voice was steady, but my chest felt tight, like I was carrying a weight I couldn't set down. She tilted her head, that infuriating innocent smile spreading across her face. "What are you talking about?" she asked, genuinely, or convincingly, confused. "I didn't say anything like that. You must have misheard me. You're too sensitive sometimes. I can't believe you twist my words like that." I froze. My own memory of her smirks, her whispered comments, the private jokes I overheard. It all suddenly seemed shaky in my mind. Was I overreacting? Grief and stress do strange things to people, right? But then, she leaned closer, whispering, "You always make things so dramatic. Why can't you just enjoy the evening?" And just like that, she shifted the focus from her behavior to my reaction, framing me as controlling, unreasonable, almost paranoid. I started doubting myself. Friends noticed my unease, and their well-meaning questions felt like salt in the wound. "Are things okay between you two? You seem tense lately?" a coworker asked during lunch. I wanted to tell them what I'd seen, what I knew, but if I spoke, I'd sound crazy. I couldn't even trust my own perception anymore. Every conversation with Vanessa became a minefield. A compliment could be twisted into an insult. A joke could become evidence of my sensitivity. I felt trapped in a world where her words carried all the weight, and mine were questioned at every turn. By the end of the week, the tension had coiled inside me like a spring. I realized with a sinking clarity that maybe this was who she truly was. The woman I married might never respect me, and certainly never my family. And that thought, buried beneath layers of love, obligation, and disbelief, settled in my chest like a stone, heavy and immovable. I wasn't supposed to see it. I never touched Vanessa's phone, respecting her privacy, even when the unease gnawed at me. But that night, as I reached for the charger she'd left on the counter, a notification popped up, a string of messages from her friend. Curiosity overpowered me. My thumb hesitated, then I opened them, and what I saw made my stomach drop straight through the floor. They were laughing about my father's funeral. "Can you believe how cheap he made it?" One message read. Another. "I swear, he thinks this is a grand gesture, but it's pathetic." And there it was again. Vanessa's name popping up with a string of emojis, mocking me, my grief, the flowers, the food, every effort I'd poured into honoring my dad. My hand shook. My heart pounded like it wanted to escape my chest. I felt every emotion at once. Shock, disbelief, rage, humiliation. The betrayal cut deeper than any argument, deeper than her sarcastic comments, deeper than the small lies and offhand insults. This wasn't private. This wasn't a slip of the tongue. This was deliberate, shared, celebrated. My grief had become entertainment for her and her friends. I felt exposed, naked in my own home, like the person I trusted most had weaponized my pain. I sank into the couch, staring at the floor as anger and heartbreak collided. How had I missed this? How had I convinced myself it was just insensitivity, just a quirk of her personality? Every memory replayed in vivid, painful detail. Her smirk at the reception, the jokes whispered in my absence, the way she deflected my confrontations. And yet, amid the storm in my chest, a terrifying thought began to creep in. I might have to leave her, but the logistics, the shared house, the finances, the friends who would take sides, it was terrifying. Could I really walk away from everything I built with someone who'd betrayed me this thoroughly? I didn't know the answer yet, but one thing was crystal clear. The woman I married, the woman I thought I knew, was not who I believed her to be. And now, the weight of that revelation pressed down on me like a storm I couldn't escape. I couldn't hold it in any longer. One evening, after another silent, tense dinner, I sat Vanessa down in the living room, my hands trembling, heart pounding. "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I saw the messages. I know what you and your friends were saying about my father, about my family, about me. How could you do that?" She leaned back on the couch, arms crossed, that infuriating smile of hers in place. "I can't believe you're taking this so seriously," she said lightly, as if we were discussing a TV show instead of my father's funeral. "Honestly, you blow things out of proportion. You always do. Maybe you're just too sensitive." I felt my throat tighten. Too sensitive? I trusted you. I expected respect. You mocked my grief. My voice cracked, the anger and pain spilling out despite myself. She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "And what are you going to do? Leave me? Go ahead. But don't think you can walk away clean. You'll regret it. Everyone will know the truth. Your little perfect life isn't so perfect without me." The words hit like a punch, and suddenly, I wasn't just angry or hurt. I was scared. Financially, socially, emotionally, I felt trapped. For the first time, I questioned everything. Every shared laugh, every moment I thought was love, every plan we'd made together. Was it all a lie? I blamed myself. Maybe I hadn't seen the signs. Maybe I'd been naive, blinded by what I wanted to believe. The disbelief burned inside me, leaving me hollow, exhausted, and ashamed. I ended the night in the guest room, the sheets still cold and unfamiliar. I stared at the ceiling, tears mingling with anger, wondering how I'd ended up here. The woman I had loved with everything inside me was fundamentally cruel, and I was utterly alone. No ally, no support, just the echo of betrayal filling the house. After that night, I knew I couldn't stay. Not if I wanted to survive this marriage without losing myself. Quietly, I began planning my exit. I reached out to a lawyer, carefully asking questions about asset division and protecting my finances. I reviewed bank statements, made copies of important documents, and started mentally mapping out every detail of leaving without tipping Vanessa off. I refused to involve friends or family yet. This had to be my battle, executed calmly and strategically. Vanessa carried on as if nothing had happened. She decorated the house with her usual flair, bought expensive new furniture, and casually bragged about future vacations she planned for us. Each indulgence, each carefree laugh felt like salt in the wound. She had no idea I was watching, analyzing, preparing. Every conversation, every glance, every smile she threw at me only hardened my resolve. Late at night, when the house was quiet, I sat in the study with a cup of coffee, imagining what freedom would feel like. I pictured myself walking out the door, leaving her alone in the house she had controlled for so long, with all her arrogance and entitlement bouncing off the walls. I could feel the weight lifting from my shoulders just thinking about it. The peace, the dignity, the calm knowledge that I was finally taking control. Yet, even as I planned, tension bubbled beneath the surface. I imagined her reactions: confusion, anger, desperation. Would she cry? Yell? Beg? The thought sent a shiver down my spine, not of fear, but anticipation. I wasn't cruel. I just wanted justice, in the quietest, most complete way possible. By the end of the week, I felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. The path ahead was uncertain, and yet, the thought of reclaiming my life gave me a sense of power I hadn't felt in years. Vanessa had no idea this was coming, and the idea of stepping into my new life while she remained trapped in our home sent a pulse of grim satisfaction through me. The day finally came, when I could no longer tiptoe around the inevitable. I asked Vanessa to sit with me in the living room, keeping my tone calm, measured, like I had rehearsed 1,000 times in my head. "Vanessa," I said, "I can't do this anymore. I can't stay married to someone who disrespects me, belittles my family, and treats my grief like entertainment. I've tried to confront you, tried to reason with you, and it's clear nothing will change." She froze, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. Then the storm hit. First shock, then anger, then the crocodile tears she was so practiced at. "You can't be serious," she cried, voice shaking just enough to seem vulnerable. "I'm your wife. After everything we've built, you're just going to throw it away? How can you be so cruel?" I stayed still, letting her words wash over me without reacting. "Cruel?" I asked quietly. "I've watched you mock my father, my family, even me. You've turned my grief into jokes for your friends. You've gaslit me at every turn. I'm not cruel. I'm honest about what this marriage has become." Her face twisted in disbelief. "This is insane. You're imagining things. You're being controlling, unreasonable." She tried to reach for my arm, but I stepped back. Her energy shifted, desperate and chaotic, as if she were grasping for control she knew she'd lost. I could see her calculating next moves, weighing threats and manipulations, trying to reclaim the upper hand. That's when she said it, the words that made my chest tighten with dread. "Fine, leave. But don't think you can just walk away. I'll make sure the world knows how reckless you are. I'll take everything if I have to. You'll regret this." I felt a cold chill creep along my spine. She wasn't bluffing, and the financial and social consequences flashed before my eyes. And yet, beneath the fear, a spark of clarity grew. I had to do this. I had to leave. The day I signed the final divorce papers, I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. Years of shared life, plans, dreams, all distilled into legal documents and signatures. I made sure everything was airtight. Finances divided fairly, assets documented, accounts separated. No loopholes, no surprises for her, and most importantly, no room for manipulation. I moved out quietly, taking only what I truly needed. The apartment I found was modest, but it was mine. And for the first time in years, I felt space to breathe, to think, to just exist without constant scrutiny or judgment. The air smelled different, sharper somehow, carrying the promise of independence. I also began reallocating shared assets, selling the expensive items she loved to flaunt, transferring ownership of vehicles, investments, and accounts. Each decision was calculated, calm, and legal. I wasn't gloating, and I didn't need to. My actions spoke louder than words, a silent assertion of control and dignity. Vanessa, of course, had no idea. She continued her routines in the house we had shared, confident in her dominance, unaware that her power was slipping through her fingers. Friends and family noticed a shift too. At lunch with mutual friends, I remained composed while she ranted about my reckless behavior and how I had it all wrong. People exchanged glances, some subtle nods, recognizing the truth in my quiet, measured responses. I didn't have to explain or defend myself. The contrast was enough. My calm composure, my restraint, my deliberate fairness, it all stood in stark contrast to her drama. That night, I walked away from the house for the last time. The windows glinted in the sunset, familiar but foreign, echoing the life we once shared. I didn't look back, didn't feel the urge to gloat or mock. The weight of betrayal was behind me, replaced by clarity and freedom. Vanessa remained inside, surrounded by her possessions, illusions intact, yet powerless to change the new reality I had quietly crafted. I locked the door, keys in my hand, and stepped into the quiet evening. For the first time in years, I felt peace. And for the first time, she would have to confront everything alone. Months passed, and life began to settle into a rhythm I hadn't known in years. I was thriving, emotionally, financially, socially. I found comfort in routines I chose for myself, not dictated by someone else's ego or disdain. Work was steady, friends were supportive, and for the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely respected. Not because I paid for people's approval, but because I earned it through integrity and consistency. Vanessa, on the other hand, became a distant echo in my life. I'd hear updates occasionally, through mutual acquaintances or a casual social media scroll. She was struggling to maintain the image she'd once flaunted. Bills piling up, the house feeling emptier than it should, isolation creeping in where laughter used to be. Some part of me felt a small, quiet satisfaction. Not malicious, just validation. Her mockery, her contempt, her manipulation, they no longer had any hold over me. I remembered the nights I'd lain awake, stomach tight, questioning my sanity, wondering if I'd imagined it all. And now, the contrast couldn't have been clearer. I had my peace, my dignity, my life rebuilt brick by brick. And she had only herself and the hollow walls of a home that once represented control and comfort, now shadowed by her own choices. I didn't gloat. I didn't post online or seek approval from anyone else. The victory was quiet, almost imperceptible, but it was real. The laughter, the whispers, the subtle scorn, they no longer haunted me. I had reclaimed every inch of myself she had tried to belittle. Sitting in my apartment one evening, I reflected on everything. The grief, the betrayal, the confrontation, and the slow, deliberate work of stepping away. The lesson was clear. Strength doesn't come from confrontation or revenge. It comes from detachment, from choosing yourself when everyone else is blind to the truth. It comes from knowing your worth and holding on to it, regardless of how loudly others try to undermine it. I smiled softly, sipping my coffee. Peace wasn't loud, but it was mine. I finally closed the chapter. I moved to a new city, rented a small apartment that smelled faintly of fresh paint and new beginnings, and built routines that belonged entirely to me. Mornings were quiet but purposeful. Coffee brewing, newspapers on the table, emails sent on my own schedule. Evenings were spent walking the streets near my apartment, watching life carry on around me, and realizing I was free for the first time in years. Vanessa eventually left the house she had once ruled with entitlement, either moving away in frustration or facing public embarrassment as neighbors and friends realized she had mismanaged finances, living far beyond her means. I didn't gloat. I didn't post updates or brag to anyone. I let silence do the talking. Success, peace, and emotional freedom became my subtle revenge, an invisible statement she could never touch. Sometimes, I would hear the occasional whisper from mutual acquaintances, her struggles, her frantic attempts to maintain status, the frustration that came with losing control. I felt nothing but a calm detachment. Every pang of betrayal and humiliation from before had been replaced by clarity, dignity, and the knowledge that I had reclaimed my life entirely on my own terms. I reflected often on everything I had endured, the grief, the betrayal, the gaslighting, the manipulation, and the thought that settled deepest in my chest was simple and undeniable. I spent years building a life with someone I trusted, and lost her. But in losing her, I finally found myself. On the last day I visited our old home to finalize paperwork, I stood in the doorway, hand on the lock, and paused. Turning the key, I felt the weight lift one final time. I wasn't just leaving a house. I was locking away the pain, the betrayal, and the years that had tried to crush me. The door clicked shut. Behind it, the past stayed. Ahead, a life of peace, dignity, and empowerment awaited. And for the first time, I felt fully, irrevocably free.